Hello everybody, here we are today talking about all the crazy things, or at least some of the crazy things that happened today, as well as an extension from yesterday. But before we get started with that, please make sure to subscribe if you're new to me or hockey, whatever the case may be. That being said, let's get on into it. So of course I've got stuff to do today, and I'm going and my data is not working at all for whatever reason, and I get back and I see all these moves that have happened today, and the first one we're going to be talking about here is the Pierre-Luc Dubois trade. Now Pierre-Luc Dubois, we did a video about a year ago when he signed an 8-year deal with the Los Angeles Kings. Is interesting because in that video I said with some of the aging guys they've got down the middle, this could be a really good signing for them as they have a long-term solution potentially, and maybe he helps them get over the hump in the playoffs, and he is hopefully going to be able to find that long-term home after having issues with Columbus and Winnipeg. And here we are now, a year after that deal was signed, and he is already going to his 4th team in his career. It's interesting because then you start to wonder how many more teams could he play for at this point. And if we're being honest here, this year was not necessarily a good one for him, as he had 40 points in 82 games played. And I don't believe that that 8-year deal kicked in at the moment. So a younger player that could be with the team for a very long time, that has some control over where he's going to be in the future, this is where you get a little bit scared if you are the Washington Capitals. Now, the good news for him is obviously he's going to get a chance at redemption, and Washington is certainly a place at the moment where they are able to give a lot of players that might not get as many minutes as they would elsewhere, as you're seeing guys like Markstrom get a really great opportunity. And the Capitals are in a very weird spot where they're able to make the playoffs last year, even though they probably shouldn't have. So I'm hoping for PLD that he's able to rebound and then find that future long-term home, if you will, in Washington, even though their future in the next 3 or 4 years is going to be up in the air in terms of how competitive they're going to be. If I have to say one thing, I don't necessarily think that he's going to be with them for the remainder of this deal, as I do believe it kicks in. Now, as for the whole Darcy Kuemper trade, this is weird, and again, this is a trade that just seems odd. Kuemper is an older goalie, but there are potential good things for the Kings here. One of those things being that he's going to be joining them, and they are one of the better defensive teams in the league in terms of shots against, chances, all those things. So you could see a rebound year for Darcy, and he is under contract for, I believe, 3 more seasons. And that could be a nice midterm solution for the Kings, as they've shown they're not afraid to go out and get guys that might not be the biggest name goalie, a Vezina winner, a Vezina contender, if you will. They are fine with having just a bunch of different guys that could be short-term solutions. So maybe Darcy could be that kind of bridge for the future as they try to figure out what they want to do. Of course, this is all going to be centered around whether or not they're able to get it done in the playoffs, and hoping that this could help them get over the hump, as they've been knocked out in the first round the past 3 seasons. How will this deal all play out? I don't know at the moment. I think Darcy could have a really good year this year, and then maybe PLD struggles a little bit. Then you would hear people say, oh my gosh, this is a total lopsided deal. But obviously, Pierre-Luc Dubois is going to be playing longer than Kuemper is. Let's wait a little bit and see how this one plays out. And as for the next trade, we had Kevin Ball in a first-round pick being shipped over from the Devils to the Calgary Flames in exchange for Jacob Markstrom. On the surface, obviously, Calgary is not getting the most exciting player, as the Devils are in Markstrom, and this is where you get to talk about the Devils a little bit. Last season was not very good compared to the season prior, where they had 112 or 13 points, a franchise best year, and then going into 2024, this season, 2023-24, the Devils were hoping to build off that to be able to go on and make maybe an Eastern Conference final run, or maybe even further. Instead, they had a year where they missed the playoffs, and they had some issues, I guess, if you want to say it like that. They had the 3rd worst save percentage in the entire league, and that was one of those things holding them back. And by getting Jacob Markstrom, maybe they figured out some of the problems from last season, and they're able to have a nice bounce back year. In my opinion, even before the season started for this upcoming year, even though it's still months away, I felt like New Jersey was going to be a team that could and should bounce back. But with the addition of Jacob Markstrom, I really do feel like this team should be able to be well and truly in the playoff hunt. And I know a lot of talk was made about how Markstrom was probably going to be on the team, as they had a lot of trade deadline talk about maybe getting him. People were frustrated saying, hey, why didn't we go out there and get him? I think a big part at the time was just the fact the Devils weren't necessarily in striking distance of getting it to the postseason. So now you're able to get him now with 2 years left on his deal, and Calgary is eating about a third of that contract for the next 2 seasons. I really am a big fan of this for the Devils, because if it doesn't work, it's only 2 years at like $4.5 million or something like that. If it does work, obviously 2 years where you have a goalie that's going to probably have good seasons, with some things like Dougie Hamilton possibly coming back and being really good. Luke Hughes, a Calder finalist, being part of this blue line that we're just talking about here, along with everything else going on for the Devils. I'd say that this should be pretty good for them. Now, as for the Calgary Flames, it is going to be really weird, because next year I don't necessarily think they're going to be a boring team, but I do think they're going to be a team that is not a playoff lock by any means and shouldn't probably make the playoffs, although watch that come back to bite me. But by getting a guy like Ball, you can use him at the moment, and he is a young player. But the first round pick is one of many picks that they've been able to get in the offseason or just in recent months. So if Calgary is able to do things right at the draft in the next few years, maybe they are able to bounce back and be a team like we saw in recent years where they were able to have really good seasons, but this time around they're actually able to go on multiple deep runs. And then the final thing we're going to talk about here is the Philip Hronek extension from yesterday. I meant to do a video over this yesterday night, just kind of got busy and I was just hanging out with my wife, so no big deal, as of course we're talking about it here today. As Hronek signs an 8-year extension for like $58 million. It's a lot of money, and this is certainly a big deal for the Canucks as they have part of their blue line figured out for the very long future, or the very foreseeable future, whatever you want to say, as I'm getting tongue-tied. Looking at Hronek, this is a player that is relatively young. He had a career year offensively and was part of this team that was able to have a great group and go on to the playoffs. Now, I do think a thing that concerns me a little bit is if you include the last 18 games of the regular season and then the last 13 games of the playoffs, he had 5 points in that span, and I look partially at this contract and say, are they giving him too much? At the moment, I say yes. I think part of this was they gave up a first-round pick and more to get him. They ended up seeing themselves have a better year than they've had in like the past 10 years, where they ended up going and winning their division, where they were on the verge of the Western Conference Final, and he was part of this team where he did play a lot of minutes, and at one point looked like, man, his season could be better than what anybody imagined, because in the season preview, I was like, yeah, Hronek is going to definitely have a career year offensively in terms of points and those things, and he did. But you did see him cool off towards the end of the season, and you worry a little bit about whether or not the Canucks are going to be able to replicate what they did this year, even if it's just getting back to the playoffs, as they were a team that had been struggling in the years prior to this. Hoping for the best, expecting the worst as a Canucks fan, but I do think with all of this, the big thing that concerns me, it's a very long-term contract, the longest you can do in the NHL at the moment. I'm not a huge fan of those, and if the first 4 years, I believe he has an NMC, no movement clause, that is concerning to me. I'm hoping that he is able to go out there and be a top pairing defenseman that is able to thrive and help this team be a regular playoff side, and maybe go out there and end the horrible drought as a Canucks fan for winning the Stanley Cup for the first time in over 50 years, the first time ever in general. But if you see the Canucks struggle, if you see him struggle, especially in a top pairing role, expect the fans to be very, very hateful, unfortunately, to him. And I do want to add, if you are a Canucks fan, please do not be mean to a player just because they are struggling. But anyway, what are your thoughts on all this? I know a lot of times when I do these videos, I'm like, man, this won't necessarily get a lot of views. But some people seem to really enjoy kind of how other creators will do it and how I will do it occasionally, talking about a lot of things where maybe I don't have enough time to do a video over every single thing, and we're throwing it all in here today. Who do you think wins the Pierre-Luc Dubois trade? Do you think that it is the Kings or the Capitals? Who do you think wins the Devils Flames trade, of course, centered around Jacob Markstrom? And do you think that the Philip Hronek extension will help Vancouver be a relatively stable playoff team where he is a 50-plus point defenseman every year, getting certainly over like 23, 24 minutes a night? Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. Also, please make sure to like this video if you enjoyed it and subscribe if you're new. Everybody stay safe, have a great night, and you go with hockey, all right. Goodbye, Brigadiers and Brigadettes. This is your captain signing off. Have a great night.